What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Surf and Sales podcast. This is season 3, episode 2. I wonder how many of these episodes, Richard, we can do before I totally forget what episode number we're on. What do you think?
I don't know.
What's the over-under? We're big on over-unders lately. What's the over-under on me forgetting what episode number we're on?
I say by episode 11, you'll forget.
Ooh, I'd take the under on that. I would take the under on that. I'm Scott Leese, one of your two co-hosts of the Surf and Sales podcast. You just heard from Richard Harris, the other co-host of the Surf and Sales podcast. And we are the founders of the Surf and Sales Summit. Check it out at surfandsales.com. Our podcast is brought to you by Reprise as well as Scratchpad. Check them out. They will help you grow in 2022. Richard is nervous and excited for his national championship game tonight for his Georgia Bulldogs.
Yeah, go Dogs. Sick.
How'd I do there on the accent, Richard?
Terrible. Yeah. You know what? You did great. In fact, I was going to stop you and tell you that was like the best intro to the podcast you've done in 3 years.
Oh, thank you. I'm very professional this year with my podcast game. Yeah.
Apparently, so.
Good luck to Georgia and you, Richard. And down goes Alabama, hopefully. We are here today with our friend, and hopefully he is feeling better. He was a little under the weather last week. It's Will Aitken, who is a sales evangelist with the Sales Feed. And the Sales Feed has been birthed by Vidyard. So we need to learn a little bit more of that. Welcome to the show, Will.
Hey, gents. How we doing?
We are good. I think we're energetic right now, I think.
Yeah, we got a lot of energy for
we got a lot of energy. Will, tell everybody, first of all, what a sales evangelist is to you and what you do and what Sales Feed is. So give people some background here.
For sure. That's a question I ask myself every day. What is a sales evangelist? It's basically a made-up title for a sales kind of influencer, creator, but at like a professional level, basically.
That's you, Scott. That's all you.
Well, I'm curious if Will saw this conversation and interview that John Barrows and I had, and James Buckley was there, where we kind of talked about this. Have you become what John and I were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I took a very special interest in that episode because you were talking about like this whole evangelist idea. That's the idea of it, as what I do. I don't get paid quite as much as what you said John Barrows would get paid if he did it, but
but you're working your way there.
You'll get there. You'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you do?
Yeah, well, like the whole idea is that people don't really follow companies. They don't want to go grab a beer with a Series B funded fintech. They follow people. They follow creators, and I'm talking to you know this, gents. But the idea is like bringing that onto a brand now can have such a big impact back to the brand. And we see this with a lot of like sales influencers that well known. The big one that comes to mind is like Sarah Brazier back to Gong. But it takes a lot of effort to always be creating content, being part of the conversation and being in communities. So some companies have taken the initiative to make that a full-time role of someone who's willing to speak on their behalf and has a following.
So tactically though, what is that? Is that like content creation? Is that video? Is that written? Is it all the above? What about outside of content creation, if anything? Is it events? Try to be specific with us.
For sure. I think it's a little bit of everything you just mentioned. It's creating content, written, video, trying to be basically everywhere, talking at events, jumping on podcasts like this one, waving the flag basically for Sales Feed. And I think it's just really, really like hyper actively in all those places.
So how do you do it that doesn't make you look, Sarah Brazier's great. We've had her on the show. I think she's like our 4th best download of episodes, which is crazy cool. But how do you do it as an evangelist? At least in my mind, when I think of an evangelist, I want them to think about Richard, but I want them to think about Surf and Sales. I do want them to think about Scott Leese, 42% of the time. I want them to think about, Harris Consulting or sales training, right? So it's not just Richard back to the Harris Consulting Group. So when you're hired by a company to do it in that role, is that possible? Is it possible to be thought leadership, and because of the thought leadership, then it comes back to the brand? Is that the first step the brand has to understand?
Yeah, it's certainly not just being a paid spokesperson. It's got to still be authentic. I think it's just creating content underneath the umbrella of that wider organization. So I don't talk about sales feed in every single one of my posts. I rarely actually talk about sales feed unless I'm promoting something that I've built for them.
Got
so
it.
it's yeah.
So talk about, because we all know, like, we're all LinkedIn heavy on the feeds, right? I see in your LinkedIn title, we're going to go there right now. You are a TikToker. I've been trying to get Scott to go on TikTok. He just, won't do it. So, what are you doing on TikTok around sales?
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, TikTok's a weird one. That's like kind of how this all started. So up in like this time last year, I was a sales professional, account executive, full cycle SMB software sales for a sales tech company. And then one like afternoon, I just opened up TikTok and made a video and really enjoyed the process of it. So I just kept doing that for a while. And then I started posting them on LinkedIn, and they did better there than they were even doing on TikTok. Then eventually, with some consistency, and because I was enjoying it and wasn't really expecting anything back from it, just kind of cascaded and snowballed. So I created a bit of a following there and have become a bit of a community on TikTok. I post videos about sales humor, relatable stuff, memes, but also I try to share advice on sales itself, but also how to start careers in sales. And the stuff about careers in sales is probably the stuff that gets the most attention, just due to the nature of the audience on TikTok being quite young.
Right.
And yeah.
Well, I don't know about that. I think the fastest way to be an influencer is to talk about recruiting and talk about jobs. If you look at like on LinkedIn, which posts and which people have the largest followings and were the original like LinkedIn influencers, they're all people in staffing.
Yeah.
Have you noticed this, Richard? Go ahead, take your post this week that you're going to do, flip all of them to be about recruiting or hiring and that kind of thing, and make them employee centric, and your engagement and your views will go through the roof, and you'll be a fucking thought leader overnight. That's all you got. No, on LinkedIn, any platform, maybe, according to Will now. Yeah, but definitely on LinkedIn.
So, gotcha. What do you find, just out of curiosity, and again, everybody listening might be, Scott and Richard, you're fucking old and idiots, right? So,
well, they probably say that anyways.
Right. But what kind of engagement does someone get on a TikTok? Because I don't ever talk about it. I sort of peruse it every now and then because I got to make sure my kids are behaving. But what kind of things do you think relate and makes it good on TikTok versus another platform?
Yeah. I think what makes TikTok really good is, for the audience, it's very easy to digest. Like it's unforgivably short, and if you don't get to the point, you get glossed over. So like I think it's just a sign of the attention span that today's media consumers have, because they love TikTok, because you can just sit there and just go and just get so much and feel like you're learning, but really you're probably killing your brain. But because it's so short and digestible, you can get huge amounts of views from it if you get on something nice. Like, to give you an example, my average video will probably get 3,000 views. On LinkedIn, it probably gets an average of 500. And then sometimes you hit gold, you post it, and it gets 2 million views organically, paying no money for it. And that's happened a few times as well, like probably 5 or 6 times at this point.
You've had a half dozen 2 million view posts. Richard, have you ever had a 1 million view post on any platform?
No, not once.
Me neither. What's the highest views you've ever had, Richard, on any post?
Somewhere like 125 on LinkedIn.
I think I got 500-ish one time, and that's my highest.
Yep.
Was it a poll?
No, it was not a poll. No. Oh man, 2 million. That's a lot of notifications potentially that I don't know if I want in my life.
I think I'm going to go and try and make a TikTok, Scott.
Good. I think you should test it out. You be the one to test it out. Okay.
Yeah.
But Will, can you do your job as a sales evangelist for more than one brand?
I think that's where the future of this could go. But then it just becomes almost being like your own media company, and you're being sponsored by people instead.
Is that bad?
I don't think that's bad. No, not at all. But I tell you that right now, the capacity that I have doing it for SalesFeed, I dip into Vidyard as well. So like when they have events and speaking opportunities, I'll go and do it for them as well. But yeah,
just because of the amount of work would be tricky to do for a half dozen companies at a time.
If it was what you were just doing, yes, but then people would stop listening because you're just constantly pushing other people's stuff, right? The reason that it works is because you're not really talking about the thing all the time. You're only talking about it like 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 5 posts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
6 people, there'd be too much noise. You wouldn't be able to get it out, and everyone would stop listening.
Well, it's interesting you say that. So the first thing is that, Will, if that's the case you're running into, where you're not charging enough, right? If you can't handle more than a half dozen clients, you need to raise the rate and have 3. Right, that's the first step. The second thing, though, I agree with you, is that, and I was just talking about someone who's sponsoring my newsletter, is that they need to do stuff that's not product related. Mm-hmm. Right. I was encouraging them that they should be doing some content around sales leadership and how in their organization, because they're a decent sized startup, they've been teaching reps to get promoted or managers to be better managers. And then that'll get associated back, to your point, back with the brand. And I think that's the key piece. So I do agree with you. I just think you need to raise your rates.
Yeah.
So what are these, those who are watching, but there some people are not, what are these long things behind you on the wall?
Yeah, for those, I suppose for everyone, those are lightsabers that I've been collecting since I started making real money in sales. I didn't know what to spend it on. I'm a bit of a nerd, Star Wars, so I started buying these replica toys basically and hanging on my wall, because pretty much creating content, coming on sales, it's a bit of a pattern interrupt. People ask about it. If they like Star Wars, then I have instant report. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. Who doesn't?
Yeah, it's a hit. I talked about this a couple of weeks ago with like all the random shit going on in my background. It's like, I think you should give people something interesting to look at, which is the opposite of the advice everybody gave at the beginning of all this Zoom, stuff in the world. Everybody was like, oh, you need to have a clear background and like blank wall and dress, with the right kind of shirt on and all this. Like, wait, what?
So I want to
that now.
So a really important question that I've never asked on Surf and Sales is, Jar Jar Binks, good or bad?
I wasn't like super. Yeah, I say good. I enjoyed.
Oh God, he's terrible.
I enjoyed just because it's funny. It makes me.
He was terrible. He blew the whole movie up for me. But I think it's a generational thing.
I like that he stuck to his guns and didn't kowtow to the audience. He likes it. Yeah. He likes it.
He's an inspiration for salespeople everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how are you tracked on performance? This is something that was brought up the other day in the conversation about an evangelist and what they're worth and all this. Like, are you tracked on like MQLs, SQLs, tracked pipeline demos that get held or set, or is it actual revenue and deal flow?
Yeah. So I think maybe to answer that question, I'll take a step back, because SalesFeed's a bit of a unique situation because it is a media company owned by another company. So almost think of it like SalesFeed is Vidyard's evangelist and I'm SalesFeed's evangelist. And at this point, we don't have any KPIs. So I don't have any KPIs. It's all subjective at this point. And then SalesFeed isn't being tracked either. Basically, the CEO of Vidyard said, hey, people are following companies that make good content and don't ask for much back. I want to start a media company. We'll figure out how the value feeds back later. Go build it for a year, and then we'll figure out how we get some value out of this thing. And my boss, Tyler Assad, hired me and said the same thing, basically. Go create me some content, bring us the audience, use your following, bring it with you a little bit, and have some fun with it, and we'll build an audience. So right now, it's very, for a salesperson, like the complete opposite of what I was used to before, where like it's very clear if you're doing.
That was my next question. How did you get into this role? Like, how did you, what got you here? Like you're getting paid to build a side hustle for another organization.
Yeah, it's so back to the TikTok thing. I started posting on TikTok. I started posting those to LinkedIn. I haven't been doing this for long. I started like April last year. And then I just kept doing that, and I kept getting really good engagement. And I was in a full cycle AE role, SMB sales for a company called Proposify. If you haven't heard of them, they're kind of like PandaDoc. That was the main competitor we had. And Tyler basically took notice of the content that I was doing on the side that was benefiting me. We all know about personal brand and how they can generate you leads, and I was selling sales tech. So creating sales content was giving me benefit. And then Tyler took notice and said, hey, Will, do you want to come be a marketer? And I was like, heck no, I'm a salesperson. I love sales. I make way too much money. You wouldn't be able to afford me anyway. But then I wanted a promotion from my boss, and he wouldn't give me one right away. So I got stroppy, and I went and had the chat with Tyler. And then I heard like the vision and the enthusiasm and the passion. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And then he told me that I could actually make more than I would as a salesperson, hitting 120% of my target. And I was like, doing the thing that I do right now as a hobby for fun as my main job. So I was like, okay, right. Now I'm super interested, and then I couldn't resist.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool.
Oh, Richard, I feel like this is the role that every sales person with a brand who's good at content and media, like, would actually prefer to have.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe not all, but like a large percent.
Yes.
Would rather do this. Like,
yes.
Will has hit the dream.
Yes. And he's getting paid to do it. We had to figure it out on our own, fucker. He's
smarter than us. That's why.
He's standing on our shoulders, Scott. Come on now. So Will, let's just dial it back. Like, what did, just way back when Will was little, what did you like about sales? What got you into the gig? Were you naturally in sales, or are you one of the people who just sort of falls into it?
I think everyone falls into it a little bit. I definitely wasn't like a 6-year-old saying like, yeah, I want to be a salesman. It's that ongoing joke, isn't it? But I always knew that I was all over the shop. So when I was in my early 20s, I couldn't figure out, I say early 20s, it was like 6 years ago. I basically became a recruiter in Australia. I got a glimpse of the commission. I was recruiting software salespeople down under, and I was seeing how much they were making and how much easier it looked than recruitment, because recruitment is basically sales with like the product can change its mind and do all kinds of funky stuff. So I was a recruiter, and then I came to North America with my wife, who's Canadian, which is how I ended up here. And I was like, I want to be a software salesperson because I know how much money these people make. And then I couldn't get a software sales job because I was in the middle of nowhere. And back then, remote work wasn't that much of a thing. So I started selling media, HR media, and I was selling to tech companies again. And I leveraged that because I really wanted to be in software sales because I knew that's where the money was. And that's how I ended up at Proposify a couple of years back.
So you had one gig as a salesperson. Well, you had the recruiting gig, which is sales, then Proposify, and now you're an evangelist.
I had a recruitment job, and then I went and sold media for 2 years.
Oh, right.
And I was selling like webinar, email campaign sponsorships, those kinds of things. It wasn't super consultative, but you know, I had some big names like selling to Career Builder and those kinds of companies and selling them webinar sponsorships, similar to what we'd see with like a John Barrows now. And then I used that to get into Proposify, and now I'm Evangelist, yes.
Yeah. So, and the reason I'm asking that is I want to make sure that people hear that you don't have to be at the gig forever. Like, it's very different. I remember when I left my first job, I'd been there for 7 years, right? And that was a lifetime compared to all my friends. And I thought it was terrible. And I went to my second job and I was like, oh, I can't leave after a year and a half. I'll look terrible. And this is 2000 during the first dot bomb. And I was in the Bay Area. And then I went to another job, and then I got bounced around a couple of times, and I just felt like this was terrible. All the way up until I was 40, when I met Scott. I guess I was 39 when I first met you. And then it just sort of hit me of like, who gives a shit? So I just want people to take note that, like, if you work hard and you're successful, you can do whatever you want to do, right? Like, that's just the way the world works. And it's a lot more receptive these days to it. So how did you, was it hard for you to, let me ask you this question. So you started doing the stuff that you loved. You created a little bit of a brand for yourself. Had Tyler and Vidyard not come to you, do you think you would have switched? Do you think you would have gone and taken the leap?
No, because the week after Tyler reached out to me, I then got the promotion I asked for, and I would have been happy.
That's the
Like-
best part.
Like
That's
my
the best
my
part.
boss should have just been like, "Yeah, well, you're promoted on the spot. You've been the best AE for 6 months. Let's give you the promotion that you asked for." And I got grumpy, and I don't like being told no.
Yes. Now, listen, every boss and sales leader and CEO out there, I hope you just heard Will's story right there, because that is very, very real. Very
Yes.
real.
Was it, by the way, Will, was it a counter offer or was it just happenstance?
It was just happenstance. Basically, I was on a team of 3 E's. I was the top performing one for a good period of time. The other 2 E's had a senior title, and I had a normal AE title.
Right.
And that didn't sit well with me as the top performer. So I was like, "Hey, boss, we spoke about it a few months ago. If you have thought about this anymore, I'd like to be up there with the guys." And he was like, "Well, I use that as a recruiting strategy to bring them on. I think we should talk about this again in the future." And at that point is when I literally finished that one-on-one, picked up the phone, called Tyler and said, "Okay, tell me what you have got for me, because I just didn't get what I wanted." Because I didn't want more money. I just wanted the glory and the
And
nice
had you-
title, right?
And so
Acknowledgement.
I'm gonna millennialize you. So hey, you'd been there 3 months and you wanted a promotion?
I'd been there for a year and I wanted a promotion.
Okay, that's fair. A year's good. I think after a year, that's fair. And if it's a good company and you're hitting your numbers at 3 or 6 months, it's appropriate to ask too. But back to what Scott was saying, I hope all the leaders are listening. As soon as you say no, someone's going to say yes. And they're going to recruit someone, and they're going to take someone who's got your 6 months of experience and go, "Oh, yeah, I can make them a senior because they've just done 6 months." Meanwhile, you're stuck in your own little bubble. So, I hope people pay attention to that too, because I think it's super important. What's next? Not that you're going to leave Vidyard or Tyler, because we would never want that, but like,
Yeah.
what do you see as like this future of evangelism in sales?
Yeah. I haven't really figured that part out yet. It's going to be my question at the end of this. But I feel like I'm still on, despite the fact the role I'm in right now is more of a marketing role, let's be honest. But just like better than marketing, because salespeople don't like marketing content. They like salespeople content. But I still consider myself on a sales career path. So like, let's say tomorrow, CEO of Vidyard says, "You know what, the salespeople experiment didn't work." I'd 100%, I wouldn't go looking for another evangelist role. I'd want to go back into sales because I know I'm good at that and I can still succeed in that and it's safe. And these roles just don't come up very often. I might try and do a side hustle where I try and build it up as like a Will Aitken media thing. So I start taking more sponsorships on TikTok, which I've already explored and done. But I'd go back to sales if this failed tomorrow. But I think like, I'm thinking to myself, how can I still do this and improve my sales skills while I'm at it, so that by the time I come out of this, I look better than I ever had to spend 2 or 3 years in another closing role. I feel like there's still space for me to be better while I'm doing this and come back. And maybe that means this is such a weird role that I could probably explain it to a hiring manager and get like jumper level to sales manager if I wanted to, because I could kind of like blag it in a way. Like, "Oh yeah, I was at the forefront of sales, talking to innovative things and whatever it may be." But it could either help me jump a level in the career, the path that I was on, or I could try and build it into something bigger on the side while continuing the career path of a salesperson.
Cool.
I haven't figured it out yet, so I'm kind of just sharing my.
I don't think anybody's figured it out yet, because this is a relatively new kind of function, you know. But one that feels like will be increasingly prevalent and interesting, you know. But you have to be at a certain size, the company. I don't think we're a long ways away from like a, you know, seed stage company having a having an evangelist on their team. But when you're talking about like Series C plus kind of companies, tech companies and whatnot, like I think it makes I
don't know. I think I would disagree. I would think once you hit Series A, because the A rounds are so big now, right? And everybody wants recognition, right? And if you could go and find the right person, right? It's got to be, in my mind, it's going to have to be somebody with an audience, right?
So who is the right person, Will? How would somebody go about trying to hire a version of you? Like, what are the things that somebody needs to look for? Is there a size audience required? Is there expertise on particular platform? Like, how does somebody hire a version of you?
Yeah. There are a couple of roles like that already exist like this. And you've had a few people on before who are already doing it.
I'm thinking, I know Ethan from Bomb Bomb, for example.
Right.
Yeah. And even like Zoe Hartsfield's career has been grown by audiences. That's kind of part of the reason why she has appeal as well. But there's like Tom Boston from Sales Loft. And there's a guy called Evan Patterson who went from an evangelist role. I think he went to Reprise, where he was an SDR at Reprise, and then he went to Troops. Regardless, this role does kind of exist, but I feel like the reason why it works is because people want to listen and hear other salespeople speak to it. I feel like companies, you can't speak to that unless you've actually been doing it. So I feel like it has to definitely be a sales practitioner who's closed, ideally, who can speak to the whole of sales and has enough that there's content there to be discussed. Because otherwise, you run out in 2 years.
I don't know. I think Ryan O'Hara is pretty good at it at Lead IQ.
Yeah.
Right. Like he's been really, like if I really think about it, he's probably been the first to do all the fun videos and stuff like that. And he's really good at it. So I think it's anybody who's.
What's interesting to me though is out of all the names mentioned, the only one that is, how shall I say, a little more advanced in their career is Ethan. Everybody else is like just kind of getting started. These are not people who've had 5, 10, 15, 20 years of experience who have hundreds of thousands of followers. Yeah. These are people who are really early gravitating into those kind of roles. But does that mean people like John and Richard and I, like, we have no chance?
I think you're already doing it.
Yeah.
I'm just asking. Nobody's out there, knocking on my door or Richard's door or John's door saying, hey, do you want to be the evangelist for our company? So maybe we're too late to the game and they're looking for people who are earlier, right?
I think it still needs to mature as a role, but you have sponsors because of who you are and how many people know you and your expertise and what you're willing to say. Oh, I missed that.
That's the same thing then, in a way?
In a way.
I said, is that the same?
I think it's like a one-person media company almost.
Thing then, in a way.
Yeah.
Richard Harris Media Company. How does that sound, Richard?
Too long of an email address. I fucking hate that. So
Harris Media Group.
Yeah. Lowell Enterprises.
John's already an evangelist. JB Sales has like 12 sponsors. He says nice things about all those companies and people buy them because of those things. It's just
Well, that's one of the reasons why I asked you if your role can expand beyond one company. I think perhaps there's an evolution where, like, right now you're at a phase where you're kind of trying to figure out what the fuck do I do every day and like what does the role actually look like. But in a year or two, maybe you've like codified the role enough and you have templates and it becomes more of a system and you're like, I can apply this system to company A, B, and C. And I know my personal limit is, 3, 4, 5 clients at a time.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe we're just too early and you're still trying to figure it out where you can't expand to multiple.
I don't think it's too early. I think you could do it now.
I don't either, but you and I are very greedy and maybe Will is very loyal.
I feel like we cut Will out of this entire podcast, so I feel really bad.
I'm having a good time.
Hey, Will, come listen to Scott and I talk about your opinions. So
I think it's important to recognize that there's an and to my role. Like, I create content as well for Sales Feed. I make YouTube videos that people get upset about. I do a lot of other stuff on the side of my role to make it a full-time role. But yeah, I think you're right, Scott. I think you could do this for multiple companies, but you just need to figure out how to cut that up and sell that, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, I want to know more about this content that you created that people got upset about.
Yes.
Well, okay. Well, I'm still doing it. I've not stopped.
Good.
Even better
advice, Scott. So I doubled down on it.
I love it. So tell the people what happened.
Right. So I do a review show called Sales Tech Talks, where I look at different pieces of sales technology and let you know if you should basically use them or not. And I've really started with just small tools that a rep can pick up and use on the side. And then I took on a bigger tool because I wanted more views. And obviously, it's kind of like riding a coattail of someone else's product. And I reviewed Seamless AI, who's more well known and has a lot more employees who are probably watched the review. And also, like, I made a post like, hey, what tool should I check out? And 6 of their reps popped up in the comments like, buy Seamless AI. And I was like, well, you basically asked for it at this point.
Right.
So I went on and I reviewed it, and their data was a bit rubbish. And I said that in the video, and I said, you know, and they credited me as a speaker at one of their events, and I wasn't at the event. So I was like, what's that about in the video? And I kind of had some fun with it because I'm a little bit cheeky like that. But a lot of their team and a few other people reached out to me and said, yo, like, you don't want to be this person who's a critic and says negative things, because, you know, not only does Seamless AI, anyone from Seamless AI is never going to want to work with you, Will, but like Zoom Info and Lead IQ are now going to be like, this Will guy's a loose cannon. What's he going to say about us? I'm like, I love that. I want to keep people on their toes. Fear me. But anyway, that's basically what happened. And I had someone reach out to me who we all know and check me pretty hard. And it kind of left me conflicted of whether I should do more of that and take a bit more of a hot take approach. But I asked him for advice from Scott, and Scott said, no, I reckon there's too much toxic positivity, and being authentic and honest, as long as you're not being mean, is an okay thing to do.
Did I give him good advice, Richard, or no?
Yes, except that you told me I would tell him to be mean. I'm like, you know, I'm ruthless. So
look, I mean, if people don't want their product talked about in a negative way, maybe they should make a better product.
Right. Or what about G2? They go send the same message to G2, right? Did you get a cease and desist?
I'm pretty sure they sent a hitman after me afterwards. So
I'm waiting for a cease and desist one day. Like, that'll be like, as soon as someone sends me a cease and desist, that's gonna be the best video ever. I'm like, hey, everybody, I can't talk about this person because they sent this letter.
But you can probably TikTok about it, Richard.
Right, exactly. So how long does it take to make a good YouTube video, TikTok? Like, is it hours? Is it?
That review I did was 10 minutes long, and it took me a day of filming, well, half a day of filming, half a day of editing. So I edit a lot of the videos as well. That's what I mean. Like, I don't just evangelize, I also have to make a video. So like, this is what
that's
makes
a lot of work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work,
right? Yeah. But TikTok probably takes me 10 minutes, right? That's the point. It's not meant to be super high production. Whereas a video,
I can do that. I think I'm going to have to make a couple of TikTok videos, Scott.
Well,
I think you should. But see, he said that he filmed like 10 minutes and then he spent a half day editing and all that. Like, I can't.
No,
I'm not doing that.
No.
If and when I ever did one, I would film this like 15-second clip or however long these things are, and I would just hit publish, and that'd be a wrap. It'd be done.
Yep. Yeah. The only reason this episode doesn't launch tomorrow is simply because we're trying to do a couple at a time, and we try to, drop them all at once. Like, that's it. So, but
I keep seeing people try to do TikTok and they're not very good at it. Like, there's a few nuances that you learn, and I got it wrong for like 3 months before I finally took off. But it is super easy once you know what to do. So like, just pay someone like me to just tell you how to do it for the first bit. Heck, you could pay someone to edit the videos. It probably wouldn't even be that expensive.
Yeah.
Or you can do what Scott you just described. We've got a mutual friend actually, Leslie Vanette, who has a big sales TikTok account. I overtook her recently. Sorry, Les. But she just pulls out her phone and shares her thoughts, and people love it because it's authentic, it's raw, and it's stuff they don't know as well. And we often overlook like how much we know that other people out there don't, or how much our opinions, how many people actually agree with us or disagree with us sometimes.
Well, Will has not convinced me to go on TikTok, but he did move the needle from -10 to like 0. I'm back we're like level. It's like I'm back at square one. We're at the ground floor now.
We're at the part where Scott lets Richard make a couple of TikTok videos, and then goes, "Fuck, I could do that better than him." And then he goes and does it, and it blows up because that's what Scott does. I'm his guinea pig. I'm the canary in the coal mine for Scott Leese. So.
If you can find a strategy that works, Richard, you just stick with it.
Yeah.
We want to thank our sponsors once again, Reprise, as well as Scratchpad, for bringing us and all of you this episode of the Surf and Sales podcast. We want to thank Will Aitken for his time. Once again, check out the sales feed as well as Vidyard. Will, we always wrap every show by saying, how can we be helpful to you? Do you have any questions for us? What do you got for us?
I have a couple, so I'm going to have to choose, but I'm going to choose the one that's selfish for me. If you were in my position, and I described my predicament to you before, I've stopped selling, but I'm still talking about sales. I don't want to come out of touch. I want to be able to have a safe sales career to return back to if the tool does go up in the air. What would you do to stay good or get better at sales while doing what I do right now?
Well, I'd continue to do things that help me learn. And, that's interacting with people who are in those roles, who have been in those roles a long time and are experts in those roles. I continue to listen to things. If you're a podcast consumer, continue to read things. If you're a reader, continue to attend events. If you learn kind of in person or more by doing. But my best advice would be to splinter out and do all that selling in different side hustles and whatnot that you're doing. Because that's selling. You're creating pipeline, you're closing deals, you're servicing and delivering, the product of which you're the product and all that kind of stuff. And I think it keeps your skills sharp. And for what you're up to, it's very similar to what Richard and I are up to. You have the opportunity to work with lots of different companies, lots of different products, lots of different industries. That means different sales cycles, different buyer personas, all this kind of stuff, right? And that keeps your skills sharp because you got to do different things for different people, right? So you kind of start to master all these things. And in some ways, I think you actually can level up your skill set faster because you're selling to all these different people than just selling one particular piece of software day after day after day. What do you think, Richard?
I agree. I think I get so much more tactical on things, but I'll go back to what Scott said way earlier in the podcast, which is start to productize this, right? Okay. So if I'm going to do this, and maybe you're going to have 3 TikTokers on, doing this. So you're going to have to teach them. So what are the best practices for a sales TikTok? What are the best practices for a YouTube? What is the best practice? Because you're going to have to sell that internally. If you've got a year, right? So at some point, what's going to happen is you're going to have to sell what you've done as something that needs to continue to exist, right? And one of 2 things, this is my prediction, somewhere around, I would say somewhere in the middle of Q2, you guys are going to have a discussion of where it's going, and you're going to have to decide if you're going to go become Will Aitken, media company, right? It's the same advice I gave Colin Cadmus a couple of years ago. Like, you're an LLC, right? And, Tyler's listening. I don't think Tyler would be shocked to hear me say that. And I think he knows it too. Like, this is the way it is, right? So they're either going to have to step up or you're going to, decide what you want to do. Maybe you don't want to go do that. Like, it's fair for you to say, no, I like the comfort of where I am with a big company. I love who I'm working with. I love what they're letting me do. I have all the freedom, maybe your life circumstances of a significant other or children will change. And so you sort of need the stability, but I think you're going to have to sell it anyway. So you're already doing it. I do think you should, go read a couple of books, listen to a couple of books around sales, and maybe even listen to some sales calls, listen to just keep yourself fresh of what it sounds like. Or maybe even go see if you can sit in on a sales call or 2. Because I think part of it, I'll think about it this way. What is the value to you to go listen to some live customer calls to hear what the customers are saying in relation to how you're going to make the social content?
Yeah.
Right. Because you do have 2 audiences. You do have the audience of the rep, right? The people who are in sales. You also have the audience of, well, what do the customers want? Because that's part of it too. So that's something I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah. What I'll give you one more question because we love you.
All right. Well, we've got time for it. I had the other question. Now it's gone. Yeah. Richard, why don't we start off now? Like, I'll give you some TikTok consulting advice. If you're talking about side gigs and selling.
All right. Sell me. Why should I hire you?
I want to know what your goals are with TikTok, and then I'll tell you that.
I have no fucking idea. you just came on the podcast and I'm like, oh, I should try that. And you know what? Actually, I'll say, you know what? I want to see if I can get more viewership. Like I'm curious about this thing. I'm curious about this platform. And I hadn't really thought about it, about sales. And I'm like, oh, maybe that'll be interesting. I can be goofy. Like, look, I'm 52. Like, do I really need to be on TikTok? Probably not. But I think that's part of the shtick. So
TikTok got more visitors this month than Google did. So just it's going places. Right. And I think it's time to be early on it. That's the urgency.
All right.
What are the other steps, Scott, of Addicted?
Okay.
Find pain, build value, create urgency.
I heard Richard acknowledge that there's a problem. He needs to get on it. Urgency. TikTok's growing. You want to be early.
Yeah.
Solution.
And now you discuss the solution. Will, look at that. That is
addiction selling
into action straight away. Good job, Will. Well done. All right, man. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Thanks again.
And Will, definitely hit me up, by the way. I do want to talk to you.
I will.
And Will just closed the deal.
So he wasn't.
See you later, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.